Direct with Jean-Luc Ayoun. December 16, 2018. Focusing on the situation, Agape, from theater to video games. Hello everyone, we are still waiting 1 or 2 minutes to start. A few elements I have to communicate to you concerning, on the one hand, the practice of Agape, not spontaneous Agape, but what I would call Agape's resonance concerning what we could call care, but in any case the resonance of everyone's heart. I will also mention what happened in the aftermath of the December 11th whale adventure, and finally, I will also mention a number of elements concerning what I now also call the Hello, Eliza. What I would no longer call the theater scene, as IDADE said, but what I now call a real video game. So, if you don't mind, we'll start with Agape. I would like to remind you briefly that the definition of this word, in French, could be love without object, without subject, or unconditional, unselfish love. At one point, that was called naked love. We could also call it naked joy, which is the translation of our experience. But the word Agape avoids everything that can be contained in the brain about love. A few months ago, we began the adventure of what was called the absorption of essences, which was a phenomenon of resonance. Today, we no longer need either one or the other, and we substitute ourselves for both when we enter Agape. That is to say, we become this unspeakable love that translates into this ecstasy, this beatitude that does not depend in any way on the person, nor on any previous or particular circumstance. Many of you have asked questions about the Agape resonance treatments that were carried out during the meeting in Malaga, where we developed not a technique, because I would say that it is, in a way, a practice without practice. That is to say, there is no exercise in energetic, vibratory or visualization fitness. There's no intention anymore. It is really Agape that is realized between an individual and another individual, which precisely demonstrates the power of love at the level of action, both on the state of consciousness of the other, but also, of course, on this state, this indescribable experience. Agape, I might add, has nothing to do with conscience. It is not a vibration, it is not an energy, it is not a feeling, even if the feeling and perception of energy and vibration are omnipresent, of course. But what happens in Agape is something that disidentifies you from the character, from your history as a soul in incarnation, as a body present on earth, but puts you in direct resonance with this naked love, if you prefer, which does not depend on anyone, neither a prior circumstance, nor on a human condition, nor on a human being in itself, but which is the expression of this ultimate consciousness that we have called the abode of supreme peace, Shanti Nilaya, the naked love, the bare joy. But all this is something that is taking root, as you see around you, in an increasingly extensive way, for an ever-increasing number of brothers and sisters. But it is important to understand that the Agape resonance will establish itself. In fact, you have nothing to ask for, you have nothing to stipulate, like illness, like discomfort, like anything. A little like in the process of absorbing essences, except that there is no longer even any intention to absorb or resonate with the essence of the other, but simply to let what happens between one and the other do. Since in the end, as you know, there is neither one nor the other, but there is this particular resonance that is omnipresent, which is the bath of consciousness, somewhere, this bath of perpetual love, of which we were until the month of May, on this world. So, Agape, whatever the way we translate it into experience, you know it is, above all, this joy, whatever the energetic, vibratory perceptions may be. Above all, it is a state of lucidity, very particular, where love is at the forefront of everything, spontaneously. That is, we can no longer see a person as a person, we can no longer see an individual or a situation as a set of circumstances, but rather as the reality of love in action and manifestation. That is the first thing. So, how is that possible? It's very simple. You create a resonance with someone, you don't need an appointment, nor do you need to set up a phone or other appointment, or to agree on a specific time. You can do it alone in your corner at any time of the day or night, you just have to think of Agape. If you feel the energies, the vibrations, so much the better, but if you don't feel them, it will work the same way. Because, again, it doesn't depend on you or the other, but on what's in between. And what we called the relationship or transaction between two individuals, is now replaced, since the presence of the Christic matrix, by this resonance of love that only asks to manifest itself, that only asks to blossom, from the moment when we do not look at our little person, from the moment when we do not look at our little story, from the moment when you leave all the space for what is there, what is already there, and what is increasingly there. And I insist, moreover, for all the brothers and sisters who do not seem to be living, by the vibrations, by the visions, by the energy, whatever it is, you're there too. And to create this resonance of agape, this resonance of the heart, as it has been called, I have expressed this resonance of agape well insofar as there is no longer even a notion of heart-to-heart or absorption of essence, but simply to put oneself in this disposition of mind that I have called this embracing, in front of a person. But not to embrace a person, not to treat anything, but to really and concretely think, as one could think of a person, with the thought, quite simple, and let what happens, happen. The resonance of agape, that's it. It is enough that there is one of them, one or the other, who is in this perception and this experience, even if it is not at the moment when he realizes it, so that this resonance treatment is done instantly. Moreover, you are countless to have tested this in different ways among yourselves, simply by thinking about this word, without even putting an individual, ever or a human being, or anyone else in it. You notice that, as soon as your thought is oriented towards this unknown, if you do not experience it, well, it will unfold. Understand that it can never, ever be a search or an exercise, or even a vibratory rise. Because, as you know, it has been explained at length by IDADE, this state of agape love, this love that depends on nothing and no one, is not a vibratory rise of consciousness. It is precisely a form of annihilation of consciousness. And at this moment, it is the precise moment when we merge within our human being, as I said, the simplest, the most basic, what we call being and non-being. For that, there is no need to look for vibration anymore, there is no asceticism, there is no practice. On the contrary, everything that you will put in front of you in relation to agape in order to hope to live it or obtain it, will move you away from it in a formal way. The only way to do this agape resonance, what I called this technique without technique or this practice without practice, even if you feel nothing, you do not need as Omriam said to put your hands on your heart to feel the heart, you simply place yourself in the present moment, even a few seconds, especially without any intention, neither for you, nor for the other, nor for any care whatsoever. You ask for agape, it's that simple. That is why we took this word and not unconditional love, because if you pronounce unconditional love, if you feel the vibrations, you will, of course, feel what is happening in the heart, but if you do not perceive the vibrations, the energies, what will happen? Your brain will take for unconditional love a notion of what is conditioned. And right away, you're done. That is to say, if you say unconditional love, do it, you'll see, nothing will happen. On the other hand, if you pronounce agape by thinking of a person simply, beforehand, for a tenth of a second, then agape's resonance will be realized. And not necessarily at the time you do it, but at the most appropriate time for the other. In other words, it is not you who decide, unless, of course, you're both at the same time, as we did in Malaga, as all the people who took part in this meeting did in the evening. But this agape, and you have many brothers and sisters who live it spontaneously, walking in the street, meeting children, shopping, where the smile is there, where this exchange of agape is there. There is no need for words, there is no need to feel and explain what is being experienced. Because when we live it, the transforming, total aspect of this agape will manifest itself more and more often in your life, independently of any desire and even independently of any privileged moment. Even if, of course, we have all noticed that there are privileged moments when this state of unconsciousness, if you will, of a consciousness, as IDADE said, will manifest itself in this way. That is, this state of joy, of beatitude, which you cannot confuse at any time. Agape is simply this notion. It is a Greek word, because the Greeks had differentiated 7 types of love. Eros love, for example, is not filial love. Thanatos love is also a form of love, has nothing to do with agape love. So, the Greeks had identified 7 types of love, which really corresponded to the situation of living it. And it's not from today, it's not from IDADE. Since this conception, you have it in all Greek philosophers, of course, who have talked about it widely. So, agape is an international word. It is a word that actually has a Greek root. But, when agape is here, you can't ask yourself questions. As soon as you ask yourself a question about living it, you can ask yourself the question, but I don't know what it is. But from the moment you try to hang up or bring what you're going through in those moments, you can't. Because it is something that is a natural state, that is a spontaneous state, and that, even if we have never lived it, the moment it is experienced, it cannot leave any doubt. As we tell you, for those who are already living it, it ends the story, it ends the ego, it restores you to your simplest humanity, but you are indeed the 3-in-1. That is to say, while all this cinema is coming to an end, you keep your physical body, and at the same time, you express being and non-being in a natural way. Because agape is not only joy. Joy is the translation of agape. But joy, we can still fool ourselves. There have been times when we are in joy, without object, without reason. But the countless brothers and sisters who live this joy of agape, cannot compare this joy to a satisfaction of anything. Remember that it is the total gift of one's life that will create this particular state. That's not your request. The best posture is an inner posture. So, whether you call it inner silence, the present moment, or whether you call it embracing, that is, you're available, in fact. Being available means not thinking about anything, not asking for anything, and simply being in this notion of embracing. Not to mention the absorption of essence or anything else. From the moment you decide to embrace agape, and you think of someone, the resonance is there. That is, it is not a relationship with the other, that you establish first. It is first of all that you think of agape, and then of the person, after having made this state of inner welcome or inner silence. That is the first important thing. I will now return briefly to this meeting, which took place on December 11th at 11 a.m., as if by chance, at the junction of the cross between the African continent, the European continent, the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, where we met this whale and its calf. Of course, for those who have watched it, you have perceived and felt, for the most part, what happened at that moment, but here I will not tell you the story again, but simply express it, and many of us have lived it, directly on the spot or even remotely, to feel it again now. It is something that is permanently installed. It is as if the connection that was established at that moment, at that precise hour, at that precise moment, with that precise animal and with those precise people, it brought something into resonance, I would say, a field of consciousness, that is, a field of resonance of consciousness, a particular field of resonance of consciousness, that allows us to gather, for all those who have lived it, even at a distance, in that zero time. There is a kind of new, we will say, greater fluidity that manifests between the different parts of being, that is, the being, the non-being and the person, which makes us immediately connected, as soon as we think of this past experience, when we connect in this present with this whale and specifically with this whale whose name could be the equivalent of what I have written, that is, Fami, NDT, Fahim, where F is a note and the soul is the middle between heaven and earth. Woman at last, complete vehicle restored in note Fa. My point is that this meeting was not scheduled, it was not anticipated, it was totally spontaneous. We took a boat trip, we came across animals marine mammals that have nothing to do there at this time of year, since the whale has already finished its transit between certain seas and Liguria, in the Adriatic. It is the only place of passage, but it is not at this time of year, and moreover, as we have told you, the whale never approaches humans when it is accompanied by its calf. So my point is that it's a video game. We didn't schedule anything, and yet everything happened exactly at the time and day, and where it was supposed to happen. So even Jean-Luc Ayoun, even the people who were there, the brothers and sisters who were us, whatever names I could put on, we just played a video game sequence. Of course, this love is unspeakable. It is a video game that translates into consciousness and the interaction between consciousness and a consciousness, of course, but that's exactly what happened. Now, you know, since May, there are many elements and events that happen, and these elements and events that happen are always linked to dates, as if by chance, both in terms of the simulacrum. I will take just one example: the dear President of the French, Emmanuel Macron, on November 11th at 11 a.m., under the Arc de Triomphe and at the tomb of the unknown soldier, performed an occult ritual, which is called a travesty, which said by name demons are released. A month later, on December 11, 2018 at 11 a.m., there was the meeting, and forget the character and the human beings who experienced it. There was a meeting between a particular situation, in a particular place, with beings who were the more banal, but who had, in this video sequence, a particular game. What I mean by that is that in your life, whether you look at your humanity, whether you look at the stage of the theater of the world, or whether you look at the inner stage that I will call cosmic, astrological, astronomical, or even symbolic event, on Earth, it is, all this, is intended to bring you closer and show you, and that is exactly the case, that everything that is happening has already been written. Like in a video game. There's no freedom. You move around by moving a joystick. You think you're the character who plays this encounter, for example, with the whale, until you realize that if it happened at that time, that day, that place, with those characters, of course we didn't prepare it, and that you will realize that everything is written. In other words, when I talk about creation and decreation, as all brothers and sisters tell us nowadays, which affect this state where there is no longer any consciousness, where there is no longer any history, and where there is no one else, well, it is our home. Exactly as Agape described it, and, closer to us, as lived by countless brothers and sisters who even testified, such as Betty Quirion, Jeff Foster, Mrs. Singer who died, all described the same thing, as did Agape, as those who experienced this non-duality really and concretely. That is to say, they did not write on the advert of Ntea, they lived it. And now, what the world theater scene shows us, like our life, that is to say that there is an overlap, in the same person, the same human, in his personal history as in the history of his family or the earth, is led to see and overlap what is on the one hand the simulacrum, everything that you were given to see. For example, I use the example of Macron's speech, but there are others. You have the cards of the Economist, the tarot that gives us elements of this end of year, but all that is written. Do not imagine that there are little devils or little angels, depending on the case, simulacrum or sacred, who are preparing the events for Jean-Luc Ayoun to be at the cross at 11:11 on December 11th, to live this story with the calf. In the same way that Mr. Macron, in the mockery, did not necessarily put himself in and uttered that particular word on that particular day, because he decided to do so on that particular day. That is to say, everything in life follows on from each other, not like someone who would see a theater scene, where you know very well that this is human and therefore the way of saying a sentence can change according to the representations. What I am telling you here is that we are in a video game. That is, even in your life and in the events that will take place in your life, a heating accident, the water that no longer works, will send you back, beyond symbolism, to this video game, and that is precisely what I explained, the superposition of your character with the events that take place in your life, any events, but those that also take place on your inner screen, if you have visions, or on the world screen, are exactly the same. And this is the formal proof that is provided, and it will be for everyone, until the event that must occur. For everyone, you'll see the video game unfold. The hero's video game is you, the hero of your life, but also on this world. And you'll see that all this is written. All the video game scenarios are written, there can be no creation in that sense, and when you make the superposition, there is a very obvious example, in the two examples I took, but we could multiply them infinitely. Everything in your life is meant to make you die laughing. Even if today you live nothing and you are in any kind of suffering, if you're an observer, that is, if you take the time to see what is happening in your body, in your life, what interactions with this world give you to live, or the interactions with who you are in eternity, even at the level of the self, all circumstances, all perceptions, lived, felt, will inexorably lead you to understand, by living it, that there can be no other thing than beatitude. And when I say that creation is a dream, that the soul is the servant or the medium between body and mind, but that ultimately the soul has no use except for the one who believes he is evolving, but in these particular times, we all find, whether we realize it again or not, it doesn't matter, because all the circumstances of our ephemeral simulacrum, as well as all the circumstances of our eternity, whether through inner experience, moods, visions if we have them, and even vibrations if we have them, will lead us to understand, as I formerly understood on December 11th and especially with the whale watching, that there is something that is there and that is intended to show us that all this is only a video game. If it is a video game, that is, the program has already been written and the decreation or rewinding of the film, as the mystics have always told us and as I have lived it, and as we are countless to live it, from the moment we are in absolute, from the moment we are stabilized at the edge, if I can say, even if it is not a place, between consciousness, spirit-consciousness, the abode of supreme peace and a consciousness, the Parabrahman of IDADE, at that moment, you see things clearly. That is, you see that both your life and, as well as what can happen in your most humane, simplest life, in your daily occupations, and what can happen on the inner screen, whether in your dreams or in the experiences you live internally, vibratory, visual or other, that you will see, in a great burst of laughter, that all this is not even a computer simulation, all this is not even a theater scene, as IDADE said, all this has already been created and has already been lived. That is, each of us, where we are today, not only contains the whole of creation, all the brothers and sisters of the earth, but from everywhere and all the consciences that exist, but that, in addition, that this, fundamentally, existed at a given moment. So, when I say a given moment, don't think of it as a notion of time, because we could try to put a figure on it in millions or billions of years, but it's not even that, it's that what happens, in this zero time, and this collective zero time, is the awareness that we are really in this video game. I didn't try, as I told you, to be with the whales at 11:11 a.m. on December 11th. It's done alone, it wasn't planned, programmed, anticipated or something that was put in place. It's the game of consciousness. It's the spontaneous and natural game of consciousness. Because all this has already been created. And if all this has already been created, this creation is outside time and space, in what I have called the myth or the dream of creation. So of course, it is impossible to accept with your reason, it is impossible to understand with vibrations and with spirit consciousness. As IDADE said, it is not in the order of something like a passing experience, it is not in the order of something that is in the order of the vibrational, but it is really an understanding in the most noble sense. But you cannot apprehend this understanding, neither by the intellect, nor by the consciousness, nor by the energies. Only when you drop everything, that at that moment, you will put in resonance and in correspondence your simulacrum, that is to say your person, your life and what you still value in this life, and the sacred which does not depend on any of these circumstances of your ephemeral life and which nevertheless puts you in resonance with that. Thus, the superposition of the coronation and the simulacrum is done in each consciousness, at this very moment, and is also realized at the level of all humanity, as well as of all creation, and not only in this dimension, and not only in this solar system. So, you'll have the formal proof, if not already done, that beyond the joy and beatitude experienced, beyond all the transformations that occur naturally when you experience this bliss, you will see clearly that all this is only something that has already been written. Nothing can be written again, because creation did not take place only in ever denser or lighter dimensions, it did not take place in all directions of space, it occurred precisely at the junction of being and non-being, in what is called Shanti Nilaya, the abode of supreme peace, the ultimate presence and everything. And as soon as you experience this, you can no longer be abused, neither by yourself nor by any new land. And besides, all the brothers and sisters who are settled with more and more, I would say, permanence and durability, in this agape, well see very well the futile, derogatory side, as well as the so-called spiritual worlds, as well as the new lands, that even the stellar origins, the stellar lines, the game of Dracos on this world, all this is seen for what it is, something that has already existed. This is how the oath and promise, lived by more and more brothers and sisters on earth, will lead us, individually and collectively. And every passing day is an infinite grace, to be able to be more and more numerous to live this. So of course, the encounter with the whales was not insignificant, insofar as we were to reproduce these encounters, but also to reproduce other types of encounters, precisely to allow the brothers and sisters to install this technique without the technique of agape, without having to give appointments to a brother or sister, but to be naturally, effortlessly, naturally, whatever the person's shortcomings that remain, whatever the habits, whatever the diseases, whatever the stories, to solve for some who still have things to solve, to be covered with this agape and to become really and concretely this agape, whatever the circumstances of the video game. By seeing the video game really and concretely, not only are you the observer, and I had the opportunity to say that we are all observers, even if we do not feel, neither the energies, nor the vibrations, nor the fire of the heart, we are all in this position. As early as June, I said that the Christic matrix took over from this binary matrix, this dualitarian matrix, and, of course, it is the light that illuminates, and, of course, I said that all this is done automatically, but as soon as you let go of any pretensions to want to direct the light or help a brother or sister through I don't know what, you just have to resonate, even if you don't feel it, and the resonance will. So don't ask questions about how to put yourself in resonance. You say I embrace agape, and at that instant, you think of a brother or sister, and everything will happen on its own. If you mix your grain of salt, your intention that the other person feels something, or to want to heal something, even if it is possible, of course, for those who leave their body, well, you will not live, you will not put the other in his resonance of agape. But on the other hand, the countless brothers and sisters who have now, for many months, asked for interventions, because I do not like the word care so much, because it is not a care. We do not treat the person, even if the organic diseases disappear, we simply allow the heart to resonate in the heart of the heart. And beyond the person, as beyond the one who can think of emitting, I do not emit anything, I do not even welcome the other in me, I no longer go to the other. It's just, understand, there's a transmitter, a receiver, and in between there's something, love, agape, it's there, it's neither the transmitter nor in the receiver, it's in between, and both of them are no longer useful, because both are in resonance with agape. You can only see the superposition of the sacred on your own simulacrum, that is, on our own dream of individuality, of someone who has a history, who has a certain age, who has children. So, of course, when I say that, don't misunderstand me. I've never told anyone to leave anyone, not his family, not his environment, not anything, but, of course, when you start to experience this ease of being in this permanent enjoyment, of course, life, the video game, is unfolding on its own. You know very well that if you let the video game run on its own, as everything is written, you can only be that. There is no effort to be made. As long as you make an effort, you're not there. As long as you're resentful or questioning, you're not there either. But that doesn't mean you won't be there the next moment. You're instantly there, as soon as you silence any claim, not by opposing yourself, but simply by placing this welcoming posture, which is also a gift, because love is a gift. And if you yourselves are not in the gift at that moment, not the gift of yourself, your wallet or your attention as a person, but if you give yourself to agape, then agape will be in the other. And you may have heard some testimonies from brothers and sisters after a short week ago in Malaga, at Elisa's house, and these brothers and sisters described the same thing to you. It's not about any energy knowledge, it's not about any gift from anyone, it's just about your ability to be spontaneous and, above all, to forget yourself and also to forget the other. When you enter Agape resonance like that, without personalization, even if there is indeed a transmitter and a receiver, you very quickly forget the transmitter and the receiver, to enter precisely into the pure information of zero time. The whale, FAM, activated, because what we experienced at that moment, with hindsight, now we realize that it is always there. As soon as we close our eyes or think, as soon as we emit the thought of FAM, we're in resonance with that. And that resonance, I have no word, because I'm not going to give another word, but simply, what I can say is that it's an orgasm, really an orgasm, so vast that the fire of the heart, the vibrations, the absolute, the Parabrahman, the self, you can forget it. When I say you can forget it, it is because this orgasm that I cannot describe, lasts in time and maintains this state of euphoria and bliss, whatever you have in your body, whatever problems you have to solve, as in any normal human life, but you're really, in that freedom of that moment, and you can't go wrong. You don't need a spiritual anteriority, you don't need an anteriority of religious research or the practice of any yoga or exercise whatsoever. You don't need to locate stars, doors and everything, even if, of course, they manifested. Go to the heart of this essential, because everything comes from there, and you really have nothing to do. If you think you have something to do, well, you're not there, because there's still something ahead of you, that is, you're not in the reception. To embrace is really to be in this moment. It is not to meditate, it is not to pray, it is not to ask, it is just to embrace life. It is not only to embrace the essence of the other, as we did, it is this notion of embracing with a great A, which creates the resonance of Agape, which has always been there and which is now accessible, I tell you, without any prerequisite. So these are really extremely important things. And you will notice, since, as we are all observers, that everything in your life, even in the simplest, most everyday elements, will show you the two sides of the medal, superimposed. That is, on the one hand, the simulacrum, the duality, everything that horns play on the stage, and everything that you experience, intimately, internally, but also externally, with your living environment, as it is, that you have a child who is ill, whether you have lost a loved one or are forced to take care of a child, a parent, or have conflicts to resolve, the simple fact of being an observer in a natural way, will lead you, whether you like it or not, to see, with a loud laugh, that the mockery and the sacred are only the two sides. The simulacrum is not only the puppets, it's also the ego. The self lived within the person. It had been explained by Omram, it is the trap of spiritual pride, but when you don't care about all that and you are really in the embracing, then all that reveals itself. Since the beginning of December, it is more and more evident, for more and more brothers and sisters, and it is also something that becomes epidemic. We also had the opportunity, on the boat where we were with the whales, to be with a couple of friends who, of course, were research. We will say, for well-being and personal development, through different techniques, through integration even at the level of preserving the fauna and flora of the seas, and therefore an involvement in the real life of this world. Well, that couple, who were with us, experienced this opening, this tearing of the prakardium and this instant placement in this ineffable joy. But you know, it's very easy to create joy, through funny stories, through staging, but the joy I'm talking about is not a staging. It's expressed that you're in tears, it's expressed that you're upset, by a pain, by a disease, by a problem to solve. It can't disappear. And it's that fluidity that we really noticed on the boat, and even among the brothers and sisters who simply watched this video. At that moment, we enter into resonance with the ultimate causal field of physics, that is, zero time. This zero time which is no longer only individual, but collective. We may precede you by a breath or two, a few days, a few weeks, but we know full well that all this, when I say all this, it is as much the encounter with the whale as the speech of the horns, as the staging they do, or the staging that is done and that is not done by someone, but that automatically comes together. because life is spontaneous, even within the confinement of what has been called dissociated 3D. And at that moment, the elements do themselves. I already had the opportunity to explain it a year or two ago, to believe that there is someone who will lead the event so that this person will do this design that is related to the travesty, or that this statesman or politician creates a specific setting when he thinks about it, is a heresy. It is simply when you're in binary, in duality, your life will be in binary and in duality. This is what we see in our lives, every day, but also on the home theater stage, at the collective level. On the other hand, when you are close to Agape, or when you begin to live Agape and resonate with Agape, you are the observer and you clearly see the simulacrum of your life, which is no longer even the ego, which is no longer even karma, but is simply a simulacrum, which has already been written. In the same way, when you experience the sacred, like meeting the whales or what you experience in Agape, you realize that all this has always been written. That is to say, there is no freedom, since the dream of creation, the dream of individuation, occurred at the same time and that the event, of whatever nature it may be, since it will formally coincide between the events of the simulacrum as given by the prophets, and the event that was announced by the ancients, stars and Mary, whether it is the final planet grid, whether it is the call of Mary or the visibility of Napier, but on the other hand, at the level of the simulacrum, this pseudo-universal revolution that has left France, all this is written. There is no freedom. Again, in a theater scene, you can change your game. But in a video game, and here, with the whale, on December 11th, that's what I really experienced, whatever the magic and whatever the fluidity of zero time that has manifested itself since that day, well, I have to accept that even the sacred, even the game of creation, what we call the genetic mothers, what we call the archangel conclave, the archangels, what we call the elders, are part of the same video game. Simply, either you look at it while living it on the side of the simulacrum and you fight with your controller to get out of it in your life and you are in search, or you are the observer and by dint of looking at and observing your character on the theater stage, what happens inside you as well as on the world theater stage, you realize the same thing, which is now done spontaneously, namely that you are neither the actor nor the spectator and, as Bhatti said, well, as soon as you leave the theater, you see that there is no theater. But no one can convince you of this, because consciousness can never be convinced that it is not at the source of life, it is the expression of life, it is the expression of dimensions, it is the binder of all dimensions. But consciousness, as Nisargadatta said, is a disease in every sense of the word, and when consciousness disappears, there you really experience freedom. This freedom is not only internal, of course, as Krishnamurti said, but it is also external. That is, at that moment, as I have said for many months, you are no longer your life, but your life, and everything that will happen, in the most insignificant events, such as the most sacred events, such as those related to the simulacrum, is happening with the same clarity. The event, at the individual level, of course, it has been experienced, already since May, June with the primary anomaly, but also with the whale on December 11th, which allowed, if you will, to bring together the world that is at the origin of creation, that is, not the one that closes the book, ever, with all of you, since you are ever, but cetaceans, that is, whales, those who make the link between heaven and earth, with the highest dimension of creation, beyond anthropomorphism, that is, beyond Sirius, what has been called the civilization of the triangles. And it was not for nothing that this happened at the cross between Africa and the Mediterranean which is the origin of civilizations, with Atlantis and, on the other hand, everything we have seen in Hawaii, with Lemuria, and Mu, above all, and what is happening in your life, all this will be superimposed and seen. But if you understand it like you have to change your life, delete wife, children, parents or whatever, you haven't understood anything, you apply it to the person. What I'm saying here is that when you're in Agape, and in an increasingly constant way, whether it's at night, whether it's going shopping, meeting anyone, or alone on your couch, you're in this state of joy, you can't look for it, it's there more and more often. So, of course, the white whale has an important role to play, and you may remember the sequence of the musical sequences, if I may say so, of May, June. I remind you that after the closing of the book on Michael Birch's video La Paroda's Blank, the very last image of the sequence is the whale. It's not the white whale, it's the whale, after the book has been closed. So, whether you follow the simulacrum, for example, economic, with the front page of The Economist of the year 2016, with the tarot cards that announce the events we are experiencing, whether you attend, whether you have seen the encounter with the whale, or even the testimony of a brother or sister, there are countless now, everywhere, who tell you their experiences, and once again, remember that when you're there can no longer be any questions about your life or anything else, and at that moment you really become life, that is, everything will come together in your life, really and concretely, fluidly, from the moment something is not fluid, it is not the light. And if you adopt this posture, even in your most banal daily life, without experiencing vibratory things or in a vision, it is the same thing. Your simulacrum leads you to the sacred. Those who live the sacred illuminate the simulacrum. Those who experience the simulacrum, even through the game of the puppets, such as Mitron's November 11th game, which announces that demons are liberated, this is an example I take, led us to exactly the same thing. That is, what happens, no matter where you seem to be looking at it, is written anyway. And so, if it has been written, we are only passing back, since creation is a dream, we are only passing back what already existed. And even those who see, on a more subtle, inner level, projections of the new earth, which exists, of stellar origins, which exist, and to realize the oath and promise at the collective level, that is, the end of the dream of creation, whatever you say, because I am fully aware that countless brothers and sisters see a new land, ask them if they are in beatitude. When you are in total beatitude, you have nothing more to see. No new earth, no new dimensions, no stellar origins, you can only laugh and smile at your own simulacrum of life, as in its sacred aspect, but also at the simulacrum of the world. You see exactly the same thing, and at that moment you are definitely free, internally and externally. You do not refuse life, you live life, and you cannot remember at anything. Whatever the event, the most traumatic or joyful, that happens, it does not change anything in your inner state. So, of course, like everyone else, there may be elements that irritate you a little, or elements of habits that can happen, manifest themselves, but you see them clearly. And from the moment you agree to let go of what is passing, as pain, as an event, in the mockery, yours or the scene of the world, even the most painful, you go through that. I explained that for many months, but today it is practical. The advent is agape, and the event, of course, has been experienced at the individual level by an ever-increasing number of brothers and sisters, but now, again, there is no date to look for, because we are in the date, and it is every day like that, so don't worry about what will happen. So of course, there are important dates. You saw, through the encounter of the whales on December 11th and then all the horns, with their date of December 11th, and also the cosmic events, the portals, as they say, the different portals related to astronomical alignments, related to the symbolism of numbers. On the one hand it is the simulacrum, on the other hand it is the sacred, but the two correspond, and they bring you back to zero time. That is, where there is only joy, where there is only peace, and where never again can the slightest question arise about who you are. You can ask yourself the question of the weather tomorrow, you can ask yourself the question of what you are going to buy to eat, but it never, ever matters. And this availability is not an effort, nor an asceticism, nor is it related to not smoking, not drinking, not being a vegetarian, or being this or that. You are totally free to do so. So it's not a responsibility, it's not a guilt either. As I said, it's obvious, total, and you'll know it. That is, if you're not living it right now, take care of what you see. What does your life give you to see? Not to explain it. Why I have such pain, why I have no money, why I have pain in such and such a place, why this happens to me. Just agree to cross without looking for an explanation. That doesn't mean that after that, the heating or the car will repair itself, of course, but you really took it differently. That is to say, you have accepted boredom, without seeking the cause at the level of any duality, even if it will have to be done afterwards, but you have been available for the embracement, and at that moment, in the most ridiculous travesty, the sacred joins you. It is not you who do it, it is life who does it for you, from the moment you accept this positioning. So I hope I've been clear enough about that. In any case, the resonances with whales will reproduce, if we are there at the beginning of the year, just as the resonances of Agape, and independently of the whales, will also reproduce, as you will notice, at the collective level, on the days when we will be in a meeting. It's not because it's us, it's because it's like that, it's because it happens like that, because it's a video game. And then, if you accept that somewhere in your head, you will experience it, but if you start asking yourself the question, and why him, and why me, and why me, and why this, and why that, but I want to know before, well, you will delay the moment when you will live it. And it will also appear to you as something that is increasingly clear, in the way your life works. It is not even the answer of the heart or the fire of the heart that will answer you anymore, it is love. At that moment, whatever happens, even if you feel sick, even if you feel limited, even if you feel you're wondering how you're going to make ends meet, that's trust, that's sacrifice. What do you trust? In this world, in your decisions, in that you are living, or really, in the intelligence of the light, in its evidence, in its love, but you cannot compromise with that. That is, the resurrection cannot end on Agape as long as you put any question in front of you. You don't need any prerequisites, you don't need to know the canellings of OURO dimensions, it's all over now. You don't need to know the location of the doors, of course there is always an intellectual interest, but at this very moment, you don't need it. You don't need symbols. But once you are in Agape, I don't hide from you that I too am as interested in what is happening on my simulacrum, as the simulacrum of the world, as my sacred, as the sacred of each person, because I don't put any partitions. Everything is part of the same life. You can no longer make the difference, in Agape, between your little person and what there is to solve in your life, and the whole of humanity and the whole cosmos. It is not a view of the spirit, it is not a decision that has been made intellectually or vibrately, it is something that is really, really, really done alone. That is why I said it was automatic. And the experience I mentioned about the whale, which also happened in relation to a particular place, a particular time, was never decided by anyone. Life organized that, and from the moment you accept that, life will always organize things in the most just and easy way for you, whatever the appearances may be. Whatever it looks like. If you accept that, you'll see. But then, of course, it's up to you. If the heating is down, it's not the Holy Spirit who's going to repair it, you'll have to repair it. But first, see the travesty behind it. And I could take you, and this is not symbolic, any element of daily life, whatever that element is, and you will only find that it is the same thing. But there is not even a need for decoding, just to be lucid and, above all, to accept. If you accept, whether you are in abundance of everything or in deprivation of everything, it is for you the best play, the best video game sequence, that will allow you to see that it was a video game. That is to say that everything is written in advance, that there is no freedom in the development of your character, as in the development of the event and the sacred. And when you see that, you are definitely free, you are free of your person, which does not mean that you should not maintain it. Once again, you are free of your thoughts, you are free of your emotions, you are free of any attachment, but you are also free of all dimensions, of any notion of transformation and evolution, and you see clearly. And the more the beatitude and the Agape takes you, the less time you will have to think about the time that is passing or look for an event date, and the less you will want to play with vibrations, with consciousness, or to imagine yourself in roles, here, as people, or even on other worlds. All this is just passing by. You're immutable and you are the truth. So, if we take the next ones, you have the famous winter solstice which, as if by chance, falls on the 22nd, twice 11th, finally 11th plus 11th, if you prefer. Of course, things will happen on the 22nd, individually in our lives, the whole period before Christmas. It will happen at the level of the simulacrum, and, of course, it will happen at the level of the sacred, but it is not different things, it is not separate things, it is simply to show us, through the game of life, that we are really, concretely, moving in a video simulation world. That is to say, it is not even a theatre scene that we will constantly perform, every day, changing and enjoying, because we change the intonation of a word or the way we play a theatre scene. Everything is written, all movements are programmed in the computer and in the video game, and the more you let go, the more you enter the so-called atemporal line, the more you enter the so-called zero time linear, that is, in the synchronicity between being, non-being and humanity, that is, the 3 in 1, and you embody it totally here. So we are not going to go back over the many manifestations, perceptions of energies, vibrations, stars, chakras, all that, because today, obviously I could talk to you about it, many brothers and sisters could talk to you about it, but sincerely, it is to put you out of step, with this agape. And all those who live it, look at the countless testimonies that come from everywhere, every day, every week, more and more clear and obvious, well, there is nothing else. So, if you are suffering, or if you are not living anything, you are there too, simply because in your video game score that you're playing, that we are all playing, you have not yet seen, you have not yet accepted that you can do nothing about it. Because you're just passing through. Because the circumstances of your life are not there to annoy you, nor to please you. They are only there to allow you to experience the obvious, even if it seems complicated, and especially if it seems complicated to you. But from the moment you have crossed, well, you see clearly. You see there's nothing to see, because everything is written. You're just following. What Christ called at the time the fluidity of unity, this kind of hypersynchronicity and ultra-temporality where there is no place for chance and everything is really a lived grace, it is really something that happens and is lived by countless brothers and sisters. It is not a privilege. We have not followed any more spirituality than others, we have not followed any teachings more than others today, it is simply brothers and sisters who are available, indeed, to be available internally, that is, not to adhere to the character's story, not to believe that your person, through vibrations, through experiences, will make you live freedom. That does not mean that there are no more visions, that there are no more vibrations, quite the contrary, since the heavenly Jerusalem nevertheless, you are countless to have gone there, to have sat in the heavenly Jerusalem. But again, if you start thinking I want to go to the heavenly Jerusalem, well, you won't live it, because it proves that you're projecting an intention, and when you are projecting an intention, even the clearest one there is, you are putting consciousness, or supraconsciousness, into play, but you are not free for what you are, that is, consciousness. And there is only the consciousness, lived through the self, as lived through the human, here on this earth, that puts you in this agape resonance and in the evidence of the truth. So of course, it's not going to end, it's not going to fill your bank overdraft, it's not going to fill the emotional void, but making you available for it to be, it will be, it's no longer your decision. Everything that has been said about this notion of agape, about this notion of obviousness, of embracing, is not something that happens in the head, it is not something that happens in another place. It's something that's happening now. That is what I had to say, and I will certainly also intervene, either Jean-Luc Ayoun or with my eyes closed as ever, like each of you, around December 22nd too, depending on how I feel. There, for example, I took the floor, well, I knew I had to talk about Agape and that the rest was linked to this notion of a theatre scene and even, I would say, a video game. So, the video game at the level of the simulacrum, it's very simple. We went to the level of the mysteries of the Illuminati puppets, the Hermit, the Yellow Vests, and we go to the last mysteries of the 2016 The Economist's cover. Because whether you take it, today, by analyzing the simulacrum or by living it, or the sacred, you only go to joy and nowhere else. That is what is absolutely incredible, is that even what is written and supposedly staged by the shadow, the absence of light, well, serves the light, and that, you really see it, because you live it every minute. And so, the arcane that is being played from today, until the 22nd, of course, is what they call the star, the arcane 17, I think, of the tarot, where we see very well characters who play the stars, who are stars of show business, and especially the star that is in the center, that is the comet that is visible on Earth from today, and especially with the full moon of December 22nd, is the winter solstice, which are indeed the simplest energies to enter the interior or rebirth, too. So, we're really entering into something that will join, as every day now, our inner simulacrum, the ego, the little person, our sacred, who we are before creation, but also the simulacra of the world, the puppets that get excited with their prophecies that they want to fulfill to stick to the books, that all the prophets saw, and what was triggered by the whale on December 11th in a specific place, which formally shows the total correspondence, on the same stage of the theater, in the same final scene of the video game, where you see both your character, what remains of it within the story, which is resolved, even if it is painful, what exists within the world scene, and what exists at the level of the collective sacred, meaning the setting in Agape and the resonance in Agape. And if you accept this simplicity, even if it's only 5 minutes, everything will become simple, which doesn't mean you won't have things to solve. When you have a leaking faucet, you fix it, you don't know, you bring in a plumber. Even if having a water leak, it does correspond to the symbolic level of something, you see. But it's not even worth seeing. It's written. So obviously, I'm not going to give you a course in symbolism of the human body, when your shoulder hurts, when you have this pain, when something happens to you, but all this is perfectly knowable. But that's not what's important to know. The important thing to know, and this is in the order of understanding, is to see that everything that must happen will happen, whatever you do, everything that must not happen will not happen, whatever you do. And even in your simulacrum, and even in your sacred. Since precisely the sacred and the simulacrum meet. The initial moment of creation is a passing dream, the dream of individuality only exists when you're in consciousness, and as long as you're in consciousness, even the most supra-consciousness, of course, you see a new earth, it is visible, I see it too, but it has already existed, just like creation, everything has been played. You know very well that all beings, whatever their initial culture, whether they are from the Eastern world, whether they are among the spheres, whether they are in the West, everything was written at the same time, in the same space, before creation. To find the heavenly Jerusalem is nothing more than to find the first breath of creation, the moment when we realized that all this was going to be a dream and that forgetting, even if there was a lockdown, was part of the game. And that this game, when you see it clearly, for your character as well as for eternity, well, you're free to play it, collectively, and it could only be realized like that. Because if there hadn't been any reminiscence, of the whole history of OURO dimensions, but you know that what predates OURO dimensions, there is only one book, and this, we discovered it a short time ago, it's thanks to a friend, it's Dialogues with the Angel. Dialogues with the Angel of Guatemala was delivered by the Archangel Uriel, who prepared, as IDADE did in his lifetime, what is happening now. I am nothing, when I tell you I am nothing, Eba is nothing, it rhymes with that. Eba is nothing, he is each of us, but he is beyond any form and any world. Don't see a superiority. And even in a role I played with the whales, don't imagine, even if there are movies coming out and everything, that I'm nothing at all, that I'm just following the character of the video game. I accept it, because I have no way of doing otherwise, I see it, but that's all. I'm not involved, at any time, even if the emotion and the experience, for example, the story with FAM, NDT. Fahim where F is a note and the soul is the middle between heaven and earth, woman at last, complete vehicle restored in note Fa, that experience, is something that is indelible. All those who experienced it with us, all those who watched it, experienced the same thing. And it's not just the people who watched it, it's spread all over the world. So, am I going to say hello to you and say, look, I did this? No, not everything, not at all. I don't claim anything, and I didn't do anything. It was the video game that put us there. So from the moment you really see it and concretely, even what is produced in May and June, I told you, already at that time, everything was automatic, and it was written in some crop circles. It was written in a history of dialogues with the angel, the arrival of OURO dimensions. It was described by Sri Aurobindo. It was described by many people. But above all, don't kid yourself, I'm nothing of what I'm playing, I have nothing to do with it, and yet I'm one of the characters, like everyone else in this video game. I either look at the sacred or I look at the simulacrum, and like my eyes and entirely in Agape, well, of course, everything that protrudes from the person, that we call habits, that we call even diseases, whatever they may be, no longer exists, really and concretely. It's not a miracle, it's not therapy, even if you have to be careful about yourself, even if there are rules of life that we all know, it's something that's natural, that's spontaneous, and of no time am I fooled, no matter how intense what's been experienced since that meeting. I was there because I had to be there. It wouldn't have been me, it would have been another story that he accomplished it, but in the same place, because it was written. We haven't prepared anything, we haven't organized anything, and from now on, in my activities as a person, wherever they are, they will be exactly the same. And you are countless others who have experienced it. Some of them have written. Whenever is in joy, everyone is in joy. Yes, it's the truth. But if every apis is in joy, we'll all be in joy. We have the same responsibility, we have the same truth, everything else is just games, distractions, that will lead us to this. For example, on the same day at the same time, there was the whale dying in the port of St. Cyprian, the same identical whale. Of course, she suffered to die. But also, of course, that she was in spirit and in truth in this total joy. She illustrated through her accident, since apparently she was cut in half by a boat propeller, and by her death which was suffering. At the same time we celebrated the junction of heaven and earth, by the coronation, as the whales that were with us said, and they will be there, of course, each time, but not to meet people, to go caress the whale, but to celebrate each time the same event, if we have time, of course. But of everything that is happening now, I guarantee you that the hardest thing today is acceptance, because acceptance is the key, because it is in acceptance, it does not mean doing nothing, but accepting, that there is redemption, if you can say, or if you prefer, this resurrection, that is giving yourself, that is what has been called sacrifice. And if you accept everything that happens on the screen of consciousness, without stopping it, without telling yourself stories, without putting anything other than what you have experienced, then you are totally free, and your whole life will be like that. And every minute of my life shows me that. It's obvious. And of course, it puts you even more in joy. And Agape can only win. Once again, I didn't create a new work by chance, it wasn't because it felt pretty to say Agape instead of unconditional love. Understand well that Agape has no opposite. When you say unconditional love, you have an opposite, it is conditional love. When you say joy, quite simply, joy, it can be triggered by a show, by anything, there are some who do it. But this joy, it doesn't depend on what I see, neither the inner nor the outer screen, it's something that is totally naked and escapes from you no matter what you do, and many of you report that you experience this state of joy, when you get on a bus, smile at a child, do your shopping. And if you really follow these lines of evidence, in all your life, every minute of every day, you can only see that no matter how much weight is still present in your habits, your beliefs, your certainties sometimes, but you can only laugh about it, because you will have joined the being and the non-being within the human being. Agape had explained the Absolute, the Parabrahman, during his lifetime. He said that these words could not fail, but on the other hand you had lots of brothers and sisters, masters, who told you about Shambhala, who told you about the 7 rays, who told you about an evolution of the soul. See where the truth is. The truth is not in spirituality. The truth is not in what you are living. The truth is not in any world. It depends on nothing and is accessible to everyone. And everything else after that will happen naturally. You will always have the same problems, you'll have to solve them, but it will be easier. We will send you the right person, you will meet the right people, we will put on your way what you need. You don't have to worry about anything, that's what it means to be alive and not to be his life anymore. And once again, it is accessible to everyone, there is no effort to make, there is no prayer, there is no request, there is just to be there, without request, that is, to be available, to embrace, to give oneself, and from that moment on, the truth is there. Everything that was promised by Uriel in dialogues with the angel, everything that was promised by Agape during his lifetime, is updated today and is lived for everyone. So obviously, you have countless brothers and sisters who take you, in spite of themselves, into visions, into explanations, coherent, quite right, quite real, quite concrete, but are you still in Agape? And as Agape said, the only difference between the one who does not know it and the one who knows it because he lives, it is that I am God as you are God, but the God in the original sense, not the icons, of course, not the false gods. But you're the creative mother, you're the angel, you're the archangel, you're the child who is starving, you are the one you hate on this earth, and you cannot escape it, because it is not a concept, it is the strict truth. So here we are. I just hope that if time is given to us and we organize these few meetings in celebration of Agape, or with cetaceans in other places or in other places, the only goal from now on, you'll see it, even without listening or transcribing Eba, or whatever I can say in satsang, that simply by being there in silence, you will experience it in exactly the same way, as you experienced it for many on December 11th and as we experienced it, too. Because what we experienced is something so vast. Of course, the others have not yet really expressed themselves, those who were with the boat. Well, the couple of friends, the captain and Gemma, they are rather digesting their opening of the heart and this wonderful story that happens to them, and as for the others, well, I think they will soon express themselves, those who were with the boat, since we were not many, we were 5. But hundreds or even thousands who have now seen these videos. And besides, you notice that if you watch other videos of encounters with whales, in particular whales or blue whales, or even the white whale, if it happens to you, that it is the same vibratory quality, but that beyond this vibratory quality, even on videos that are decades old now, you notice the same emptiness and, what I have called, this extremely vast aspect of this love that really seems. It's even more Agape, it's not even limited, the only word I can find, because right now, I really don't have another, it's so vast, it's so vast. And it will happen again, of course, because there is no other solution, if we have time. As you know, we're in a kind of suspended time where everything seems to accelerate and at the same time stop, in a way, it is just the location of consciousness changing, and that, to allow at the time of what has been called the stasis or the final planet grid, no matter what, no one can be driven by any dimensions or any scenario whatsoever. Because if you ask all the brothers and sisters who live Agape, and well sincerely, we don't need history, we don't need people, we don't need form, we don't need dimensions, we don't need anything. And why do we want to be imperfect where when we see it clearly, we see that all the creations, these worlds, these universes, have always been there and have been created at the same time and in the same space, outside time and space. And we are finally, in the liberation of this world, only completing the dream of creation, and that, well, we all realize it together, and, of course, the changeover of the event, well, call it as you wish, we are now countless to have lived it, that is to say, we can accept to leave this body, to lie down in the white paradise and when the time comes to, without any transition, find ourselves in this eternal bliss of Parabrahman or the Absolute. There is no longer even any need for a body of eternity, even if at the moment, indeed, the body of eternity is very present. There are some who feel its appendages, others who have burning feet, others who have a burning heart, others who have compressed breasts, others who have a kind of beak that grows in the front of the body, others who really have wings that grow. But all this, ultimately, doesn't even affect us. So, it is a disappearance in form, a disappearance of consciousness, but it is not nothing. But all the brothers who now live Agape can no longer be deceived by any savior, any geneticist mother, any future or become, and you are free, even before you are free at the collective level. That's what I had to tell you. Well, I've talked long enough. It's 5:17, it's been an hour and 17, it's time to stop because it's the right time. There. I say to you all very soon, and you will soon have the dates of the Agape resonances and the cetacean resonances to live it. See you soon. Thank you to you. Through Jean-Luc Ayoun. Les Transformations. French transcription. Agape team. Spanish translation. LMF.